Welcome to the Common Man Football Show. My name is James Coburn, and today's episode, we're talking about college football top 25 picks and predictions for week 14. Each week, I collect all of the current 2017 college football data in order to analyze and project potential college football performance. And since it's a weekly collection, there's always going to be some variation between various data points. However, there's always going to be little nuggets of truth that could become bigger nuggets of truth as the season continues. So stick around as I analyze each week's matchups based on analytics. And if you're new to the channel, all terms and definitions will be in the description. So starting with a recap of week 13. Did pretty well in week 13. There's a couple games here and there that I do think are some losses, but went 15-5. Games that were missed. Mississippi State, Ole Miss. Definitely a game that was missed based on the data. On top of that, Miami versus Pittsburgh. That's probably the biggest upset out of all the upsets because Pittsburgh was a very below average team. Then, of course, you get to Alabama-Auburn, the Iron Bowl. Now, as I told you guys in the video, if you go back and you watch the video from last week, I made it very clear that that is a very, very close football game. Very, very close. You're talking 3-point difference between both those teams. So I'm not saying that the data predicted the upset, but what I am saying is that it was a game at Auburn where the difference between both these teams was only about 3 points difference in terms of team strength. You do the math. Then, of course, you get to Boise State, Fresno State. That definitely was more so for Boise State, and Fresno State ended up winning that game. Then finally, you have Notre Dame, Stanford, where Stanford obviously got that win, and Notre Dame has been kind of on a downward spiral up to this point, despite some of the success they've had. So now when you get to this week's matchups, there's fewer of them this week because it's championship week. But I do think it is a good week to kind of keep track of the big games in particular. So looking at this week, Stanford versus USC. In this particular game, most of the data favors Stanford. This, of course, is a rematch from earlier in the year where USC beat Stanford pretty handily. But we'll see what happens. But this definitely is going to be a very interesting game because both these teams did face each other, and they played pretty well. USC played better, despite what the data says right now. So again, the data is mainly based on what these teams are over the course of the entire season, not so much about how they performed in one game. And Stanford has performed a lot better over the course of the season compared to how USC has performed. Based on data. And then, of course, you get to Memphis, UCF. This game goes to Central Florida. One thing to keep in track of in this particular game, though, is Scott Frost, of course, is going to be going to Nebraska. At least there's been a lot of talk about him becoming the coach there. And sometimes that can hurt things. Sometimes teams lose focus. Focus. When you have teams that do that, when they have coaches that go to another team or they get fired or whatever, a lot of times you can have implosion. A lot of times people lose focus. People have issues. So just like this conversation we're having right now. So definitely keep track of that because this could actually go to Memphis technically because of this, but we'll see. But Central Florida definitely is favored, but definitely one of those games that I would kind of be worried about to a certain extent. Then, of course, we get Oklahoma, TCU. In this particular game, TCU is favored. We'll see what happens. I think this is going to be a big game to determine if Oklahoma goes on to the national championship, or at least the Final Four. So we'll keep track of that. But definitely a big, big game. TCU is favored, but Oklahoma always has a shot to do well in this game. Then we get Auburn versus Georgia. Really, really close, guys. Most of the data favors Auburn, but it's 97.49 to 97.92. So it actually favors Georgia. But that's about a point. That's not even 0.5 difference between both these teams. That's how close this game is. So I would hands off on this game in terms of prediction because that is too close to call. Way too close to call. So just keep that in mind, however the outcome is. Then, of course, we get Boise State versus Fresno State. Still, data favors Boise State, 82.92 to 81.95. Fresno State, of course, beat Boise State. So this is a rematch as well. But we'll see what happens. Very, very close game. Whoever wins, of course, the Mountain West Conference Championship. But we'll see. Then, of course, you get Ohio State versus Wisconsin. Another tight game, guys. Like, this is going to be one of those weird weeks. Like, this is just going to be one of those weird weeks where there's probably going to be a lot of predictions that are wrong this week because of how close the games are. But this game in particular, Ohio State, Wisconsin. Ohio State, 97.10 to Wisconsin, 97.68. So, Wisconsin is favored, but super, super close. Very, very close. And there are some flaws with Wisconsin, particularly when it comes to turnovers. So that could be a big deciding factor in this game that actually swings towards Ohio State, because Ohio State has had to play a much tougher schedule than Wisconsin up to this point in terms of strength of schedule. And then the final game to discuss is Clemson versus Miami. In this particular game, Clemson is favored 97.73 to 92.08. So that's definitely a close game to keep track of as well. Definitely goes towards Clemson, but we'll have to see what happens because that's definitely a very close game. And of course, my name is James Coburn. You can find my other work at draftcoburn.wordpress.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at Geometrics. And if you like this content and you want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Share this video as well with anybody that you know, and I will talk to you guys in the next video. Peace.